A U.S. Marine found a German Shepherd puppy beneath a broken cart, and felt the pulse return. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. He wasn't supposed to find anything living out there. The morning had been quiet, the kind of quiet that settles over an old supply lot after a long night of rain. Staff Sergeant Daniel Cole moved through it with steady steps, the air cool against his skin, the scent of wet dirt and rust lingering like a memory. He had finished his night shift an hour earlier, but something, he could never say what, pulled him to take the long route back. The clouds hung low, still heavy, and the world felt washed out in soft gray light. That was when he noticed the broken cart. One wheel bent inward. The wooden slats cracked. A faint drip of water tapped against its frame, rhythmic as a tired heartbeat. Daniel would have walked past it, just another piece of forgotten equipment, if not for the small flicker of movement beneath it, a shift no larger than a breath. He paused. The wind slipped across the lot, carrying a thin, uneven sound. Not a cry. Not even a whimper. More like the smallest scrape of air trying to stay alive. Daniel crouched, boots pressing into the damp gravel. The shadows beneath the cart were dense, layered with debris washed in by the rain. Then he saw it. A tiny body curled tight against the cold ground, formatted with mud and rainwater. A German Shepherd puppy, no bigger than his two hands put together. Still. Too still. For a moment, Daniel felt the world narrow to a single point. He reached in carefully, the metal edge brushing his sleeve as he slid his arm under the cart. The puppy didn't react. Its head lolled slightly as Daniel lifted it into the light. A soft, limp weight. The kind that steals hope in an instant. He pressed two fingers gently to the tiny chest, expecting nothing but silence. But there, barely there, a faint pulse brushed against his touch, so fragile it felt like a secret trying not to disappear. Daniel exhaled, the breath shaky despite years of discipline. The pulse fluttered again, as if answering him. As if refusing to let go. And in that quiet moment, with the rain easing and the morning light trembling through the clouds, he realized he wasn't holding a lost cause. He was holding the beginning of a small, stubborn miracle. Daniel held the tiny puppy against his chest, feeling each fragile flutter of its heartbeat through his palms as he hurried across the deserted lot. The air was still cool, the faint scent of wet gravel rising with every step, and the clouds above drifted like pale unfinished thoughts. He moved carefully, steady but urgent, afraid that even the smallest jolt might break the thin thread of life he was carrying. The puppy's fur, damp and chilled, pressed into his jacket, and for a moment Daniel felt the warmth of his own body try to shelter it, as if instinct could build a wall against the fading cold. He whispered nothing. Words felt too heavy for something this delicate. Instead he let silence be a promise. His truck was parked near the fence line, beads of rain still clinging to the windshield. When he opened the door, a faint gust of warm interior air brushed out, carrying the scent of fabric and old coffee. He eased into the driver's seat, holding the puppy close with one arm while turning the ignition with the other. The engine rumbled awake, steady and reassuring, like a heartbeat bigger than both of them. As the heater hummed to life, a soft warmth filled the cabin, wrapping around the small body in his hands. He watched the puppy's chest rise in shallow waves, each breath a fragile declaration that it was still here. Daniel kept one hand gently against that small chest, counting the faint pulses that flickered beneath his fingertips. They were irregular, scattered like lost steps, but they were there. Life trying. Life insisting. The dirt road outside blurred into a muted ribbon as he began to drive, the morning light shifting through the windshield, brushing the puppy's fur with a soft glow. He spoke quietly, not sure if the little one could hear him, not sure if hearing even mattered. "Stay with me," he murmured, his voice low, steady, almost prayerful. "You hang on. Just a little longer." The puppy's ear twitched, just barely, the movement so small it might have been imagined, yet Daniel felt it like a spark. Hope was not loud. It breathed in inches. The road curved toward town, where the small veterinary clinic waited at the edge of a grove of cottonwoods. Their branches shimmered faintly from the last of the rain, leaves trembling in the breeze like whispered encouragements. Daniel pressed forward, every mile feeling both too long and not long enough. The puppy shifted slightly in his hands, letting out a soft sound, thin and uncertain, but alive. The kind of sound a soul makes when it does not want to be forgotten. Daniel steadied it, his thumb brushing a patch of fur no bigger than a coin. "I have you," he said, more to reassure the tiny heart than himself. And as the town finally came into view, washed in the pale glow of early morning, Daniel felt something quiet settle inside him. A kind of calm that comes only when a man realizes he is carrying more than a life. He is carrying a chance. A small, stubborn chance refusing to fade. The veterinary clinic sat quiet in the early morning light, its windows still fogged from the cool night air, the faint smell of pine drifting from the cottonwoods nearby. Daniel parked the truck beneath their trembling branches and gathered the tiny puppy into his arms, careful, steady, as if the whole world depended on how gently he moved. The warmth from the heater clung to the puppy's damp fur, but its breaths were still shallow, each one a small struggle wrapped in silence. Daniel pushed through the clinic door, the soft chime barely audible above his own heartbeat. Inside, the lights were low, the reception empty except for the faint hum of the overhead fan. A woman in a pale blue coat stepped out from the back, startled for a moment before her expression softened into concern. Dr. Elaine Turner, the local veterinarian, had the calm presence of someone who had walked families through both heartache and healing. Her eyes moved immediately to the small bundle in Daniel's arms. "How long has he been like this?" she asked quietly. Daniel shook his head. "Found him this morning. Under a broken cart near the supply lot. He had a pulse, but it is faint." She nodded once, purposeful, and motioned him into the exam room. The stainless steel table was cool beneath Daniel's hands as he laid the puppy down, his fingers lingering just long enough to feel that fragile rise and fall of its chest. Dr. Turner worked quickly, warming blankets, a small oxygen tube, gentle touches that seemed to form a protective circle around the tiny life. The puppy stirred faintly, a soft tremor running through its paws as the warmth began to reach it. Daniel watched every movement, shoulders tense, breath tight, as if he feared that anything louder than a whisper might shatter the moment. The doctor pressed her hand lightly against the puppy's chest, counting. Listening. Waiting. "He is fighting," she murmured, almost to herself. "There is not much strength, but there is will." Daniel felt something loosen in his chest, not relief exactly, but a quiet shift, like hope testing its weight. The room was still, filled only with the steady hum of the warming unit and the soft sound of the puppy's breath. Daniel leaned closer, resting his hand beside the small body. The puppy's head turned just slightly toward the warmth of his palm, its tiny nose brushing the edge of his skin. The touch was faint, no more than a whisper, but it traveled straight to the place inside him he rarely let the world see. Dr. Turner looked up, her voice gentle. "He knows you are here." Daniel swallowed, steadying his breath as the morning sun began to drift through the blinds, laying thin bands of gold across the table. In that quiet room, with a tiny heartbeat fluttering beneath careful hands, it felt as though something unseen was guiding the moment. Not luck. Not chance. Something softer. Something that arrives only when a life hangs by a thread and refuses to let go. Morning settled softly over the small exam room, laying a muted glow across the metal table where the tiny German Shepherd puppy rested beneath warmed blankets. Dr. Elaine Turner adjusted the oxygen tube with gentle precision, her movements quiet and measured, as if every motion carried its own prayer. Daniel stood close enough to feel the warmth drifting from the heating unit, but far enough to give the doctor space. His hands rested lightly on the table's edge, the cool stainless steel grounding him while his eyes stayed fixed on the fragile rise and fall of the puppy's chest. Outside the clinic window, the cottonwoods rustled with the first hints of a warming day, their leaves shimmering like small mirrors catching the light. The world was waking slowly, but inside the room time seemed suspended, as if waiting for one small life to decide whether to stay. The puppy let out a faint sound, barely more than a sigh, and Daniel leaned in slightly. "He is responding to the warmth," Dr. Turner said softly. "That is a good sign. It means his body is not giving up." Daniel nodded, feeling the words settle inside him with careful weight. He watched as the doctor wrapped another layer of warm towel around the puppy's small form. The fur, though still damp near the edges, was beginning to fluff slightly under the heat, revealing soft shades of tan and sable. The puppy's eyelids fluttered once, then stilled again, but the movement sent a quiet ripple of hope through the room. Dr. Turner glanced at Daniel, her voice steady. "These moments matter. Sometimes, a little warmth and a little presence are more important than anything I can do." Daniel lowered his hand, placing his palm near the puppy's head without touching it, letting his presence be felt without pressure. The puppy shifted again, its tiny nose brushing the warmth in the air. It was such a small motion, but Daniel felt it like a thread stitching two hearts together. He exhaled slowly, his breath warm in the room's stillness. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice low. The doctor folded her hands, her expression thoughtful. "We watch him. We support him. If he keeps responding, his body might find the strength it needs." Her eyes softened. "It is fragile, Daniel. But not impossible." The word fragile echoed inside him, but so did not impossible. The sun pressed a little brighter through the blinds, casting gentle stripes of gold across the small form on the table. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The warmth hummed softly. The puppy breathed. The world held its breath with them. Daniel felt something shift, quiet and real, like the first step of a long road forming beneath his feet. It was not certainty. It was not victory. It was simply this, a pulse, faint but returning, choosing life one small moment at a time. The morning deepened slowly, bringing a soft warmth that drifted through the blinds and settled over the small exam room like a quiet promise. Daniel stood where he had stood for what felt like hours, his posture steady, his breathing measured, though his eyes revealed the weight of every moment. The tiny German Shepherd puppy lay cocooned beneath the warmed blankets, its chest rising in delicate, uneven breaths that carried the rhythm of a fragile will. Dr. Elaine Turner moved with the calm certainty of someone who understood the thin boundary between holding on and letting go. She checked the oxygen flow, adjusted the heating pad, and listened again to the fluttering heartbeat that had begun to find a steadier cadence. "His temperature is coming up," she murmured. "Slowly, but it is progress." Daniel let the words settle in his chest like a soft ember, warm enough to remind him that hope did not always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it arrived in the form of a single breath that refused to fade. Outside, the cottonwoods rustled in the light breeze, their leaves catching glimmers of sunlight as if the world itself was leaning closer to see whether this tiny life would push through. The clinic's old clock ticked softly from the wall, each second falling like a gentle footstep guiding them through the long stretch of waiting. The puppy stirred beneath the blankets, a faint twitch in its hind leg, followed by a soft sound that barely lifted above a whisper. Daniel felt his breath catch as he moved his hand closer, letting his palm hover near the small form. The warmth from the puppy met his skin, fragile but real. Dr. Turner watched the exchange, her expression softening. "He responds to you," she said quietly. "Animals know presence. They know when someone means safety." Daniel did not answer. He simply allowed his fingers to rest lightly near the edge of the blanket. The puppy shifted again, this time nudging its tiny head toward his hand as if drawn to the calm he offered. It was a gesture so small that most would have missed it, but for Daniel it carried the weight of a lighthouse beam breaking through a fog. The sun climbed a little higher, painting the table in warm gold. The gentle hum of the heating unit and the soft cadence of breathing filled the room. There was no rush. No demands. Just a steady unfolding of life inching its way back. "What do you think his story is?" Daniel asked quietly, his voice barely above the hush of the room. Dr. Turner folded a fresh towel and placed it near the puppy. "Sometimes stories begin in hardship so that the part that comes after means more," she said. "Sometimes the ones found in the cold are meant to be found." Daniel absorbed her words as he watched the puppy's chest rise and fall with growing steadiness. A small spark of strength pulsed beneath the blankets, faint but growing. In that warm, quiet room, it felt as if something unseen was knitting a second chance together, one careful heartbeat at a time. The hours stretched gently, marked not by the ticking of the clock on the clinic wall but by the slow, determined rhythm of a tiny heartbeat gaining strength. The soft hum of the heating unit blended with the faint rustling of the cottonwoods outside, their leaves catching pockets of sunlight that flickered across the exam room floor. Daniel stayed beside the table, unwilling to move far, his presence steady and quiet like a watchman keeping vigil. The puppy, still wrapped beneath layers of warm towels, shifted again, this time with a little more intention. Its small paw pushed weakly against the blanket as though testing the weight of the world it had almost left behind. Dr. Elaine Turner observed the movement with a tempered calm, her hands folded gently before she stepped closer to listen to the puppy's chest. "His heartbeat is stronger than it was an hour ago," she murmured, her voice warm but measured. "Still fragile, but he is fighting with everything he has." Daniel felt something in him ease, the tightness in his chest loosening with each word. The morning sun had risen fully now, casting soft golden light through the blinds and painting the room in a quiet glow that made the stainless steel table seem less cold, less clinical. Instead, it felt like a place where second chances were shaped by breath and warmth and the stubborn will to keep going. The puppy let out a small sound, higher than before, a little tremble that wavered in the air like the first note of a song learning its own melody. Daniel's hand hovered closer, and the puppy's nose nudged faintly toward the warmth radiating from his skin. The contact lasted only a heartbeat, but it sent a soft ripple of recognition through the space between them. "He knows you," Dr. Turner said, her tone thoughtful. "There are bonds we do not always see right away, but they reveal themselves in quiet ways." Daniel let the thought settle, the truth of it reaching a place inside him that had gone quiet long ago. His eyes stayed fixed on the small form beneath the blankets, watching each fragile motion as if memorizing hope itself. The doctor stepped back to prepare a small syringe of fluids, explaining quietly, "This will help him stay hydrated as his body recovers. It is gentle, nothing overwhelming." She administered it with careful hands, and the puppy responded with a faint twitch, its tiny ears fluttering in the soft air. The warmth in the room grew, not in temperature but in feeling, as though life was slowly finding its way back through invisible threads stitching the moment together. Daniel leaned a little closer, his voice quiet, almost reverent. "You are not alone, little one. Keep trying." The puppy's chest rose a little more evenly, the breaths no longer scattered fragments but forming a shy rhythm that hinted at resilience. Outside, a beam of sunlight broke through the branches, landing softly across the puppy's blanket. Dr. Turner noticed it and smiled gently. "Sometimes," she said, "light finds exactly where it needs to fall." Daniel felt the truth of it settle over him, warm and certain, as the smallest flicker of strength pulsed beneath those tiny ribs, promising that the story was not done yet. The light in the exam room grew warmer as the morning eased into late day, the soft gold deepening across the walls and settling on the small form bundled beneath the blankets. The puppy's breaths, once scattered and faint, now followed a shy but steady rhythm, each rise and fall a quiet declaration that life was gathering its strength. Daniel stayed close, his hand resting near the edge of the blanket, offering a presence that needed no explanation. Dr. Elaine Turner stepped back from the table, giving both of them space while she prepared a small dish of warmed formula. The gentle scent drifted through the room, mild and comforting, carrying with it a sense of beginning. "If he wakes enough to try," she said softly, "this may help him regain some energy." Daniel nodded, though his eyes never left the puppy. He could see the faint twitch of its ears, the tiny shift beneath the towel as warmth continued knitting its way through tired muscles. The world outside moved quietly, the cottonwoods swaying in the light breeze, their leaves scattering patterns of sun and shadow across the floor. For a moment, everything felt suspended, held together by the fragile thread of hope slowly tightening into something stronger. The puppy stirred again, this time lifting its head just barely, as though testing the weight of the moment. Daniel felt his breath hitch, the simplicity of that small effort striking him deeper than he expected. The tiny nose brushed the air as if searching for something familiar, something safe. "There you go," Daniel whispered, his voice steady but soft, carrying a warmth that seemed to settle gently over the little body. The puppy turned faintly toward his voice, a quiet recognition sparking in its movement. Dr. Turner watched with an encouraging smile. "He hears you. That is a very good sign." She held the small dish nearby, waiting. The puppy blinked once, slow and unsure, but its eyes opened just enough to reveal a glimmer of life beneath the exhaustion. It leaned slightly toward the warmth of Daniel's hand, brushing its nose against the side of his palm. The contact was brief, but it felt like the world catching its breath. Daniel steadied his hand, careful not to overwhelm the tiny creature. "You are doing great," he murmured, his words a soft anchor in the quiet room. The doctor lowered the dish just close enough to allow the scent to drift toward the puppy. It took a moment, then another, before the small body shifted again, drawn by curiosity or instinct or the simple pull of survival. The first attempt was too weak, and the puppy's head sank back into the blanket. But a moment later, with a trembling determination that seemed far too large for its tiny frame, it tried again. Its mouth brushed the edge of the warmed formula, and a small sound escaped, half sigh and half effort. Dr. Turner's smile deepened. "There it is. That is strength beginning to show." Daniel felt something tender rise within him, a quiet swell of gratitude for this fragile, stubborn will to live. The light in the room softened as a cloud drifted past, leaving the puppy and the man watching over him wrapped in a moment that felt almost sacred. The tiny heartbeat, once barely there, now thumped with growing conviction beneath the blankets, each beat a promise that the miracle forming here was not finished yet. Afternoon light drifted lower across the exam room, turning the golden stripes on the walls into a softer amber glow that seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the tiny heartbeat beneath the blankets. The warmth had settled in fully now, wrapping the puppy in a gentle cocoon that felt almost like the embrace of a world inviting it back. Dr. Elaine Turner stepped quietly to the side, giving the small creature room to rest after its first real attempt at nourishment. The formula dish remained close, still warm, carrying a scent that whispered comfort and possibility. Daniel watched the puppy with a stillness that came from somewhere deep inside him, a place used to noise and discipline and the weight of responsibility, but rarely moments this fragile. The puppy lifted its head again, just slightly, the effort trembling through its tiny muscles. Its eyes, barely open earlier, widened a fraction more, revealing a soft brown shimmer that caught the fading sunlight. It blinked slowly, as though adjusting to a world that had nearly slipped away. Daniel leaned in a little, his voice low and steady. "There you are," he murmured, offering the warmth of his palm near the edge of the blanket. The puppy responded with a faint nudge, its nose brushing the air toward him as if guided by some quiet instinct. Its breaths came steadier now, the rhythm no longer as scattered. Dr. Turner observed the moment, her expression gentle. "His energy is returning," she said. "Not much, but enough to show he wants to stay." Daniel let out a slow breath, one he had not realized he was holding. Outside, a light breeze stirred the cottonwoods, their branches swaying as though echoing the puppy's gradual awakening. The rustling leaves cast soft, shifting shapes across the clinic floor, like little blessings moving in time with each fragile heartbeat. The puppy shifted again, making a small, determined effort to inch closer to Daniel's hand. Its paws, still weak, slid over the blanket with the hesitant confidence of a newborn taking its very first steps toward trust. Daniel offered his fingers gently, letting the puppy make the choice. When the tiny head rested briefly against his hand, warmth meeting warmth, something quiet and profound passed through the space between them. It felt like recognition, thin but undeniable, as if the little one knew the scent and steadiness of the person who had pulled it from the cold. Dr. Turner placed a fresh layer of warm towel around the puppy's body, careful not to disturb the moment. "Let him rest now," she said softly. "He has used a lot of strength today." The puppy let out a small sigh, curling faintly into the blankets, but its head remained near Daniel's hand, refusing to withdraw completely. The fading day wrapped the room in calm, the golden light dimming into a gentle dusk that made every motion feel sacred. Daniel stayed still, offering presence without pressure, letting the tiny life draw whatever peace it needed from the quiet. And as the shadows lengthened, the faint beat beneath the blankets grew just a little stronger, as if gathering courage for whatever miracle waited in the moments ahead. Evening settled gently over the clinic, softening every corner of the small exam room until it felt less like a place of urgency and more like a quiet shelter carved out of time. The golden light that had stretched across the walls throughout the afternoon now faded into a warm dusk, leaving behind a calm glow that wrapped itself around the tiny German Shepherd puppy resting beneath the blankets. Daniel remained beside the table, his presence steady, the kind of stillness that comes from someone who knows that hope often grows in silence. The puppy's breathing had become more rhythmic, each inhale and exhale carrying a little more strength than the last. It was subtle, almost easy to miss, but Daniel noticed every nuance, as if his heart had learned to echo the fragile beat beneath the blankets. Dr. Elaine Turner checked the monitors one last time, though nothing about her movements suggested worry. Instead, she paused, watching the tiny creature with an expression that carried both relief and gentle caution. "He has come a long way today," she said softly. "But this is usually the moment when the body decides what comes next. It can be quiet before a step forward, or quiet before a setback." Daniel nodded, absorbing her words without letting fear find a foothold. The room felt too sacred for fear. The puppy stirred, its tiny paws shifting beneath the warm towels. Then, without warning, its breath slowed. Not stopping, not faltering, but slowing in a way that made the air tighten just slightly. Daniel leaned closer, listening, the warmth of his hand hovering near the small form. The puppy's head lowered back into the blanket, its body relaxing, almost too relaxed. For a moment, the room felt suspended in a fragile stillness. Dr. Turner stepped forward, her expression calm but focused. She laid her hand gently over the puppy's side, feeling for the rhythm beneath. A long second passed. Then another. The quiet deepened. Daniel felt his chest tighten, the kind of ache that arrives when the world holds its breath all at once. He whispered, barely audible, "Stay with me, little one." And then it happened. A flutter beneath the doctor's hand. Soft. Weak. But unmistakable. The tiny heartbeat, which had slowed to almost nothing, suddenly pushed upward with a small burst of strength, followed by another, stronger than the first. The puppy's body gave a faint tremor, as though gathering itself from the edge of sleep. Dr. Turner let out a slow breath, her shoulders easing. "That is a rebound," she murmured. "A good one." The puppy opened its eyes, not fully, just enough for two small glimmers of brown to catch the dim light. It gazed at Daniel with a softness that carried more weight than any words could hold. Daniel felt something inside him shift, a quiet flood of emotion rising without warning. The puppy nudged its nose toward his hand, weak but intentional, as if assuring him it was still here, still fighting. Outside, the cottonwoods rustled with a gentle murmur, the evening breeze moving through their branches like a whisper of encouragement. And in that small room, beneath the fading light, the fragile heartbeat that had nearly slipped away returned with a new, stubborn determination, marking the moment when the miracle began to reveal itself. Night settled softly over the clinic, bringing with it a deep calm that wrapped around the little exam room like a protective veil. The lamps along the wall cast a warm amber glow, dim enough to let the puppy rest but bright enough to hold the moment steady. Daniel remained beside the table, his posture relaxed but alert, the kind of quiet readiness that came naturally to him after years of standing watch in far different places. The tiny German Shepherd puppy, bundled beneath layers of warm blankets, breathed with a new steadiness. The fragile rhythm that had faltered earlier now pulsed with a growing certainty, each gentle beat whispering that the struggle of the day was turning into something else, something like renewal. Dr. Elaine Turner finished updating her notes before stepping back to the table. Her smile was small, but it carried a depth that words rarely captured. "He is stabilizing," she said softly. "His body is beginning to trust the warmth and rest." Daniel nodded, feeling a quiet sense of awe rise within him. He had seen resilience before, in men who pushed through impossible days, but watching it in something so small, so delicate, struck a different chord deep inside him. The puppy stirred, lifting its head a tiny inch before letting it rest again. Its eyes blinked open, clearer now, reflecting the soft light in a way that made them look warm and searching. Daniel lowered his hand, letting his fingers hover just above the blanket. The puppy nudged its nose toward the familiar presence, a gesture filled with quiet trust. "He knows you saved him," Dr. Turner murmured, her voice touched with gentle certainty. Daniel felt the words settle into him like a slow, steady warmth. The puppy made another small sound, not quite a whimper, more like a soft hum, the kind that comes from a creature discovering comfort after too long in the cold. Outside, the night breeze rustled through the cottonwoods, their leaves whispering softly against the dark sky. The sound drifted through the cracked window, blending with the rhythmic hum of the heating unit. It created a lullaby of sorts, one meant for healing and quiet beginnings. A fresh beam of moonlight slipped through the blinds, landing across the blankets where the puppy rested. The silver glow met the golden warmth of the lamp, creating a soft halo that wrapped around the tiny form. Daniel watched the rise and fall of its chest, the now consistent pattern that spoke of strength returning. "You are not out of the woods," he whispered gently, "but you are getting there." Dr. Turner stood nearby, her arms folded loosely, her expression thoughtful. "With rest, food, and the right kind of company," she said, "he has every chance." Daniel glanced up. "Company?" She smiled knowingly. "He has already chosen his." Daniel looked back at the puppy, whose small head now rested fully against his fingers, as if the warmth there had become its anchor. In the quiet hum of the room, something shifted, not loud, not sudden, but real. A connection forming, gentle and sure, like a new heartbeat learning its rhythm. And as the night deepened, the tiny pulse that had once been barely felt now thumped with soft determination, carrying both of them into the fragile beginning of something neither had expected when the day began. The night deepened into a gentle quiet, the kind that settles softly over small towns and quiet clinics, carrying with it a sense of peace that felt earned. Inside the exam room, the warm glow of the lamp cast a tender circle of light around the tiny German Shepherd puppy, who now slept with a calm that had been unimaginable just hours earlier. The steady rise and fall of his chest carried the rhythm of a life choosing to stay. Daniel remained by the table, his hand resting close enough for the puppy to sense his presence even in sleep. The faint warmth of the little head leaning toward his fingers earlier had left an imprint on him, something quiet and steady that continued to unfold inside his chest. He watched the small creature breathe, every motion delicate but sure, as though each breath was stitching a new beginning into the night. Dr. Elaine Turner stepped back into the room after giving them a moment. She carried a soft blanket, freshly warmed, draped over her arms. "He is through the hardest part," she said quietly, her voice carrying a gentle certainty. "His body is responding. Now he needs rest, food, and someone he trusts nearby." Daniel glanced from the puppy to the doctor, understanding that her words were meant for him as much as for the little one on the table. The doctor placed the warm blanket over the puppy, tucking the edges lightly around his small frame. The puppy shifted but did not wake, leaning instinctively toward the warmth and safety around him. "He is bonding to you," she added softly. "That kind of connection does not form easily, especially after what he has been through." Daniel felt the weight of the moment, light but real, like the first touch of dawn before sunrise. He rested the tip of his finger against the puppy's paw, and in sleep, the tiny paw curled faintly in response. It was not a conscious gesture, but it carried a meaning that sank deep. The puppy trusted him. Outside the windows, the moon hung low over the cottonwoods, casting silver threads across the leaves that swayed gently in the breeze. Their soft rustling seeped into the room, mingling with the quiet hum of the heating unit. The world seemed to lean closer, listening. Dr. Turner adjusted a few settings, ensuring the little one stayed warm through the night. Then she looked at Daniel with a knowing softness. "You should rest too," she said. "But something tells me you are not leaving him." Daniel shook his head lightly. "Not tonight," he replied, his voice low. "Not after everything he has fought for." The doctor smiled, a quiet curve that carried approval. "Then he is in good hands." She stepped away, leaving Daniel alone with the tiny survivor whose heartbeat had become a fragile anchor in the quiet hours. Daniel pulled a chair close and settled into it, the simple act feeling like a promise. He watched the soft glow of the lamp spill gently across the puppy's fur, highlighting the subtle rise and fall of his breathing. In the hush of the night, with only moonlight and warmth to witness them, Daniel felt a small peace settle over him, a peace born from connection, from quiet courage, and from the kind of trust that forms only between souls who have pulled each other back from the edge. And as the puppy slept, safe and warm, Daniel knew this night marked the beginning of something neither of them had expected, something shaped not by duty, but by heart. The night stretched into the quiet hours before dawn, the kind of stillness that feels almost sacred, where every soft sound carries a weight of meaning. The clinic had grown hushed, lights dimmed to a warm amber glow, leaving only the small exam lamp casting its gentle circle over the tiny German Shepherd puppy sleeping beneath the blankets. Daniel remained in the chair beside him, his posture relaxed but watchful, the kind of silent guardianship that comes from knowing a fragile life has trusted you to stay near. The puppy's breathing, once a scattered whisper, now followed a steady pattern, each rise and fall carrying more strength than the last. Every so often, his small paws twitched beneath the blanket, as though his dreams were stitching themselves together from new warmth and a sense of safety he had never known before. Dr. Elaine Turner stepped quietly into the room, her soft-soled shoes barely making a sound against the tile. She observed the scene, the sleeping puppy, the Marine keeping vigil, the calm that had settled over them like a protective veil. "He is holding steady," she whispered, her voice warm. "This is the kind of rest his body has been waiting for." Daniel nodded, his eyes never leaving the small bundle. A faint smile touched his expression, the kind that grows not from relief alone but from witnessing a miracle in slow motion. The doctor adjusted the blanket one last time, ensuring the puppy stayed fully wrapped in warmth. "You know," she said gently, "animals do not choose their rescues lightly. They sense the soul that offers them safety." Daniel absorbed her words, feeling them settle deep inside him. He thought of the moment beneath the broken cart, the near stillness of the puppy's chest, the pulse that had returned only when held against his hands. He thought of how even now, in sleep, the little one leaned toward him as if guided by something beyond instinct, something like recognition. Outside, the cottonwoods shifted in a low breeze, their leaves brushing softly against one another with a sound that resembled a sigh. The moon cast silver threads through the branches, letting slivers of light fall across the window and into the room. It illuminated the puppy's fur with a faint shimmer, turning the soft tan and sable shades into something almost luminous. The puppy stirred, eyes still closed, and nudged his tiny head toward the warmth of Daniel's hand resting near the blanket's edge. Daniel responded by placing 2 fingers gently along the curve of the blanket, offering steadiness without disturbing his sleep. The small heartbeat pressed faintly against the fabric, steady and sure. Dr. Turner watched the exchange with quiet appreciation. "Faith does not always announce itself," she said. "Sometimes it appears exactly like this." Her words lingered in the air, soft but resonant, like a truth wrapped in the simplicity of a quiet night. Daniel did not speak, but something in his expression shifted, an understanding, a recognition of a bond forming not out of chance, but out of something deeper. The room seemed to breathe with them, the warmth of the lamp blending with the cool moonlight to create a gentle balance of hope and rest. And in that still moment, the truth settled between them in a way that required no explanation. The smallest spark of faith, carried in a tiny heartbeat, had become real long before either of them had fully realized it. The first hints of dawn began to gather at the edges of the sky, soft and pale, the kind of quiet light that slips gently into a room without disturbing the stillness it finds. Inside the clinic, the exam lamp glowed with a warm steadiness, but it was the newborn daylight that slowly wove itself through the blinds and drifted across the tiny German shepherd puppy resting beneath the blankets. Daniel had not moved far through the night. He sat in the same chair beside the table, his presence unwavering, the kind of vigil kept not out of duty but out of something deeper, something that had grown quietly with each fragile heartbeat he had witnessed. The puppy stirred as the morning light touched his fur, a soft ripple of movement that carried none of the weakness from the night before. His small paws stretched in the warmth, then relaxed again, as though greeting the day with a newfound ease. Dr. Elaine Turner entered the room quietly, her footsteps slow and gentle, as if she did not want to disturb the delicate peace settling over the space. She paused when she saw the puppy shift, her expression softening into a smile that held both relief and quiet gratitude. "He made it through the night stronger than I expected," she said in a hushed tone. "Look at him. His body is waking up." Daniel leaned forward as the tiny head lifted, just slightly, but with purpose. The puppy blinked against the early morning glow, his eyes clearer than they had been at any point since Daniel first held him. A soft whine escaped, not from fear, but from recognition, as though he sensed the familiar presence waiting beside him. Daniel placed his hand near the edge of the blanket, offering the gentle warmth the puppy had relied on through the night. The little one nudged forward, pushing his nose against Daniel's fingers with a tenderness that felt like a message carried in silence. Dr. Turner watched the moment unfold, her voice gentle. "Some bonds begin before we even understand them. He trusts you completely." The sunlight grew stronger, filling the room with a soft gold that touched everything it reached, from the instruments on the counter to the worn tile floor. When it landed across the puppy's fur, it revealed the subtle sheen returning to his coat, the tiny hints of strength forming where there had only been exhaustion. The puppy pushed himself up an inch taller, trembling but determined, his small body learning the rhythm of life again. Daniel steadied him with just a touch near the blanket, letting the puppy find his balance. "You are doing great," he murmured, his voice low and steady, carrying the calm of someone who had seen many hard nights but rarely one that ended with a miracle this small and this profound. The puppy's tail gave its first faint wag, a gesture almost too small to notice, but Daniel felt it like a quiet sunrise breaking inside him. Dr. Turner stepped closer, her voice warm with meaning. "Faith does not need proof to be real. It just needs room to grow." Daniel glanced down at the tiny life leaning into his hand, the soft heartbeat beneath the fur no longer fragile but steady, sure. He let the weight of the moment settle over him, the warmth, the trust, the grace woven into a miracle he had not expected but found anyway beneath a broken cart. Outside, the cottonwoods moved gently in the early breeze, their leaves shimmering in the new day's light. And inside the room, with dawn unfolding around them, a marine and a puppy shared a quiet beginning shaped not by chance, but by the smallest act of mercy that had saved two souls at once.